On today's show, Cavs president of basketball operations, Koby Altman, met with the media on Monday, said a few things that I think are pretty important for the outlook of the offseason. I'll tell you what those things are on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, as we get started here, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Koby Altman met with the media for about 45 minutes on Monday morning at Cleveland Clinic Courts in Independence, and he had a lot to say. He was asked a lot of questions. There were quite a few media members that did show up to this, and I thought that there were several interesting things that he talked about. I do want to talk about the core of this team because I think that the definition of the core of the Cleveland Cavaliers has changed. We will get to that coming up in a little bit. I think that we got some financial answers as far as what the Cavs are going to look like, not just this upcoming season, but for the next couple of seasons. We will get to that coming up in a little bit. But my biggest takeaway from what Koby Altman had to say on Monday was this is a really, really big summer for Evan Mobley. I think that the Cavs are putting a lot of weight on Evan Mobley's shoulders for the future of this franchise. I think they're at the point now where, listen, Evan had a great year. I believe that when all NBA teams are announced, he's going to be second team all NBA. Already has been named the defensive player of the year. He had a great season, first time All-Star. And I firmly do believe that his trajectory is only going up still. And I thought that Monday, the way that Koby Altman talked about him, it wasn't necessarily this organization is going to go as far as Evan Mobley can take it, because I don't think that's true. I think that's unfair, actually, to the other pieces like Donovan Mitchell, like Darius Garland. But I also think that it's more fair to say they go as Evan Mobley goes. That the better Evan Mobley gets, the better chances of the Cavs winning a championship this year. That doesn't mean that he needs to be an MVP in order for them to win a title. I think he probably does need to be somebody that if the Cavs are going to win a title, does he need to be the best player? I don't know, but I think he needs to be better than what he was during this postseason. And the Cavs recognize that. Koby Altman came out and basically said, we cannot have playoff games where Evan Mobley only has 13 shots. He needs to be a higher usage player, and that was accomplished in the regular season this year. But that is something that needs to translate to the postseason. That is something that the Cavs have recognized needs to be part of their postseason identity, because I do think that the team they were in the postseason was much different for a number of different reasons than the team they were in the regular season. And I think Evan Mobley was one of them, not because I don't think Evan Mobley was up to the task. And I think this is not just Evan Mobley's fault. I think it's partially the fault of the primary ball handlers. I think it's partially the fault of Kenny Atkinson, that Evan wasn't as involved offensively as he could have been. And of course, the injury to his ankle in the second round, I think hampered things as well. And I think that is part of the equation here when you have this conversation. That being said, the Cavs are expecting Evan Mobley to take, I don't know if another leap forward is the right way to phrase it. You know what? I actually do think it is. I think that they're expecting him to take another leap forward next year. The way Koby Altman spoke about this on Monday, it leads me to think that for the jump that Evan took from what he was last season to what he was this year that just finished was a pretty considerable jump, right? I think we can all agree that he was a much, much, much better offensive player. And I mean, health was part of it. He missed a ton of time 2 years ago. And I think Defensively, I don't know that he's reached his ceiling. I think like his floor is just so high on that end. I don't know that there needs to be a ton of focus there. But I do think after listening to Koby speak, I think that there is an expectation that he takes a leap of a similar size going from what he is right at this moment at about 4 o'clock on May 19th as I record this to what he is a year from now. I do think that they expect him to take basically the same leap he took next year, where all of these things that he improved upon, the three-point shooting, I thought the handle was better this year. His passing, I do think, has always been really good, but I thought it was even a little bit better this year. And take that forward the same amount he did. Like the three-point shooting, I'm not saying he's ever going to go out and be a 45% three-point shooter because I don't think that to be true. But can he be a slightly better shooter on a higher volume? I think he can. I absolutely think he can. I think that should be the expectation. Thing number one that I look at, I think the most important thing for him to do this offseason is tighten up his handle, is get better handling the basketball so he can be somebody that can create for himself a little bit more efficiently. I think the Cavs are expecting him to come back. Like, I think he is leaving this season as a star player. I don't think that you can be second team All-NBA in today's NBA, where I think that we are in the most talent-rich era in the league's history. I don't think you can be named, which, again, not official yet, but I would expect it to be this. I do not think that you can be named somebody that had one of the 10 best seasons in basketball and not be a star. So I think that's where he's at right now. I think that after, again, listening to what Koby Altman had to say, I think that the expectation for Evan Mobley should be that he comes back next year and goes from a star to a superstar. I think that is one of the things that I gathered from this availability on Monday. That is where the Cavs still think they can improve the most. And when they made the trade for Donovan Mitchell, and I know I've not been doing this podcast since then, but the day they made that trade, I said to myself and at the place I was working at the time, like my main takeaway was the Cavs are making this trade not because they're betting on Donovan Mitchell. They are making this trade because they are betting on Evan Mobley. And by time Evan plays another basketball game, we will be, 3 years removed from that trade, and they're still making that same bet. And I do think that is the right way to look at things. Like, I don't think Evan is anywhere near his ceiling. I think he's going to be a superstar. I think that if this year taught us something about Evan Mobley, and I know the playoffs did not go as planned for anybody, I think that I went from thinking about Evan Mobley that, he'll be an all-NBA guy a couple times. Like, he'll finish second team. He's going to be a perennial all-defense guy. That has obviously not changed. I went from thinking that to Evan Mobley is going to make multiple first-team All-NBAs in his career. And maybe that starts next year. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But I do think that that is the path the Cavs are choosing to go down, is that Evan Mobley is going to be, if and when the Cavs win a championship, Evan Mobley might not be the best player on the team if it happens next year. Like, I don't know that he's going to be better than Donovan Mitchell next year. I think in 2 years he might be. If and when the Cavs win a championship with this core together, Evan Mobley is going to be arguably the biggest reason why. I think that is one of the things that I feel pretty strongly about after listening, because they said, we go as he goes. And that is a fair place to be. He's going to break through at some point. They believe that. I don't think that there are reasons to doubt that. I think that somebody of the talent level he has makes it easy to see that happening. And Koby Altman reminded us a number of times, Evan Mobley is only 23 years old. He's still very young, and he has done nothing but be around winning and success for the entirety of his career so far. When he was drafted, the Cavs were not good, but they go from 22 wins while he was at USC, the year he was at USC, they won 22 games, to 44 wins his rookie year, and then 51 wins, and then 48 wins, and then 64 wins this year. They've gotten better every year, and loosely gotten better every year. Next year, I don't know that they're going to be better regular season-wise, But similar to going from 51 wins to 48 wins, but saying that got better, they advanced farther in the postseason. Next year, for them to get better, like there's not a regular season win total that says this team is better this year than they were last year. It's going to be all about the postseason. They understand that. I think everybody understands that. But a lot of it's going to be based upon what does Evan Mobley look like when he returns for training camp in October. That is one of the things that I thought was really important to come out of what Koby Altman had to say. There was another thing that I think the Cavs are going to struggle to let go of for a long time based on what Koby said. And I actually think that's a really good thing. We'll talk about that next right here on Locked on Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Car Gurus. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting, but between the confusing prices and hidden fees, it can feel overwhelming. That's why Car Gurus is the place to go. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. With over 4 million listings, Car Gurus has new and used cars at a greater frequency than any other major online marketplace in the United States. They verify dealers, provide a real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second guessing yourself. It can be a stressful experience. Car Gurus here to take some of that stress away. Do you need a deal that you can trust? Car Gurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. Plus, they've got price drop alerts so you know exactly when the perfect car is available for your budget. So what you need to do is the next time you buy or sell your car, use Car Gurus. Head to cargurus.com. That is CARGURUS.com. Again, cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. Again, cargurus.com. Buy or sell your car today with cargurus.com. Thank you again for making Locked on Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find us anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. One of the things Koby Altman touched on a few times on Monday was the Game 2 loss that the Cavs had to the Indiana Pacers. Of course, if you need a refresher, that was a game where they led by 7 points with 45 seconds left in the game, and they lost because they could not inbound the basketball. They couldn't get rebounds on missed free throws by the Pacers. They failed to do all of the little things. And after exit interviews with members of the team, that would have been, I think, last Wednesday, one of the things that repeatedly came up in that setting was the mental toughness aspect of things. You know, Max Drew said that we need to get mentally tougher. I believe Donovan Mitchell said something similar. Like it was a thing that was repeated throughout the day, that mental toughness needed to be improved. And maybe some physical toughness too. But the mental toughness was kind of the thing that was focused on. And I asked Koby Altman about the mental toughness and whether or not that is something that can be developed internally, or if that is something that you kind of need to go out and acquire. And one of the things he brought up was that Game 2 loss. The way they lost that game was, I think looking back on it, like that is where they lost the series. Game 1 kind of happens, whatever. But when they failed to close out that game, the series was over at that moment. And I think that is where they lost that game. And they lost that game because they were not mentally tough enough. He mentioned, I think, 3 or 4 times the inability to get a rebound on a missed foul shot. He mentioned not being able to inbound the basketball. He talked about this game in a way that I think, as he looks back on this series, and he also did mention, you know, things are still very raw, like they're not over this loss, and they shouldn't be. I don't think they'll be over this loss for a year. I think that this is going to be something that not just weighs on Koby's mind, but I think organizationally, this is going to be something that really weighs on them for a while, because this has been a pretty big missed opportunity. But I do think they're approaching this the right way, because they are owning their failure, which, as I've mentioned since they lost this series, was a very important thing for them to do this offseason. But I think you look at Game 2 specifically, because that is where I thought they had they showcased the least mental toughness. Like that is where they lost the series, and they lost that game because the Pacers were mentally stronger than they were down the stretch. Indiana made the plays and the Cavs didn't. And that's why the Pacers are still playing basketball. And I'm talking about Koby Altman's end of season availability with you right now. But he did say the Pacers had that and they didn't. And it's clear to me that he's not past game 2 specifically. And I don't think anyone with the Cavs is or should be past game 2. And I think that that's kind of the moment that you look at and say, okay, if this team is going to learn that mental toughness internally, I still do think like there need to be external additions that bring that to the roster. But I think it's kind of hard for Koby to talk about that stuff right now when you're still 6-ish weeks away from free agency. So I think it's easier to focus on the internal side of things. But he mentioned the fact that the Pacers had been there before, that they were in the conference finals last year, that somebody like Pascal Siakam, even though I don't necessarily think he had a large part other than missing free throws at the end of game 2, he's been the second best player on a team that won the title when he was with Toronto back in 2019. Miles Turner has been in the playoffs a bunch of times. Obviously, that whole team was in the conference finals last year, and that was something that they look at as matter. Like, I don't think mental toughness hurt them in game 4. I just don't think they were ready to play. But I think that they're going to be all offseason, not just haunted by what happened overall in the series, because I think some of it's bad luck. I think some of it's explainable. But game 2 is the thing that you just keep coming back to and say, that is inexplicable. That is inexcusable. That's not bad luck. That is just a terrible job of closing out a basketball game that cost you the series. Because he also did mention, the series probably looks different if it's tied at 1 going to Indiana. Do the Cavs still win game 3 by 24 points? I don't know. Like, the Pacers are probably a little bit more ready to play in game 3 if it's tied 1-1. If, say, the Cavs still win game 3 and they're up 2-1, do they look the same in game 4? Like, we will never know. And that was an ultimate sliding doors moment for that game, for that series, and for this team. But it is a thing where that's going to eat at them. That's going to haunt them throughout the offseason. And that's going to be a thing that you look at and say, they need to get tougher. And if they do get tougher, it's going to be because they got through that experience. I think that should be the game they think about all offseason. And I think from listening to what Koby Altman had to say, I look at it and say, okay, well, at least they are thinking about the right things. At least, despite the fact that they failed and they wasted an opportunity, at least they are thinking about the right things. There are a couple of more things that I think are worth noting from Koby's presser. And one of them, and I talked about this on yesterday's show, is the financial ramifications of keeping this team together, because they are not going to be a cheap team by any stretch of the imagination. And Koby did say they are willing to be a team that is in the tax, like and they've not paid the tax since, I believe, 2018. I believe the last year LeBron was here, they were in the tax. If not, then it was the year before. It was 2017. I'm not sure, but they've not been, I don't believe, a tax team since. It hasn't made sense to be a tax team since. But I do think under Dan Gilbert's ownership, whenever the Cavs have been a championship contending team, they have been a team that is willing to pay the tax. That is not changing. They are willing to pay the tax as long as they're a championship contending team. They are, as Koby also said, willing to be in the second apron, which brings forth a lot of restrictions and I think makes Koby's job very challenging and very pressure-filled this summer. I think that the apron stuff is a bad thing for the NBA. I think it's a bad thing for the Cavs. I believe that I believe that several organizations, and I have talked to a couple other than the Cavs, all feel as if this is not a good thing for the league, that this is something that makes life really, really difficult and it is too restrictive. And I do believe that the Cavs feel the same way, even if they won't necessarily explicitly say that on the record. I do believe that they feel as if this is too restrictive and it is something that's going to make life harder for them. But they are willing to be there. They are willing to be that expensive. And they're going to be that expensive unless they drastically reshape the roster, which is not something that I anticipate happening. I don't think we're going to see this roster look insanely different, but I do think that the way we talk about the core for the Cavs is probably something that needs to change. And I'll tell you why next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Skims. Yeah, we're going to talk about my underwear because my underwear is the best. And when I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued, a little confused, but I was certainly intrigued. I thought, well, it's got to be at least a good product, right? Like you would see the ads or hear about it, and it's like, well, it seems like it's high quality stuff, but you never really know until you try it out for yourself. So what have I done? I've tried it out for myself, and I couldn't be happier. It is the best underwear that I've ever worn. I typically have stuck with the same style of underwear, but I've circulated through a lot of different brands and a few different fabrics throughout my underwear wearing life. And I have to say, Skims for Men is the best underwear that I've worn. I've never been happier. It doesn't bunch up on the sides, which is something that drives me nuts. It's insanely comfortable. I am never as comfortable as when I have Skims Men's on. It is absolutely my favorite underwear I've ever worn, and it might be your favorite underwear you've ever worn too. I would imagine it is because it's that good. So what you need to do is head on over to Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. That is SKIMS.com/LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, and in Skims stores. Let them know that we sent you to. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Skims is also the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, and USA Basketball as well. If those folks are wearing it, I would think it's pretty good for you. So again, head on over to Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA, and then you can be as happy with your underwear as I am with mine. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, if you're watching the show on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button for me as we keep going here. Click subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest from us. And we've talked about the core of the Cavs for the last several years, right? This group now has just completed its third year together. And I think that we are at a point, and Koby didn't explicitly say this, and I don't think that this is something he should explicitly say. And I'm not saying that there's going to be changes here. Although I do think if there's one piece that changes, the biggest piece would be Jarrett Allen. And I think at this point, I know the core four sounds cool. And I know that Jarrett Allen is a borderline all-star caliber player. He's made an all-star team, albeit as an injury replacement. I thought he had a great year last year. Thought he was really good again this year. But I think that the core for the Cavs is three players. And I think that we should probably start treating it as three players. It's Donovan Mitchell, it's Evan Mobley, and it's Darius Garland. Those are the three guys that are the core of this team. I think Jarrett Allen, it's fair to call him, is a very high-level role player. And you need high-level role players. This doesn't mean Jarrett Allen is a bad player, but he's not what those other three guys are. When you listen to what Koby Altman says, a lot of his answers focused on those three guys. They didn't focus on Jarrett Allen. They focused on Donovan. They focused on Evan. They focused on Darius. One of the answers that he talked about, and this was kind of about how you learn, like get that mental toughness and whatever. And in his answer, he got to the point where he brought up those three guys. And he said, quote, "I'm not counting out a 28-year-old Donovan Mitchell who showed the most efficient year of his career this year and is dying to get to that next level. I'm not counting out 25-year-old Darius Garland. I'm not counting out a 23-year-old Evan Mobley. This is where we're going to get better, and this is where we're going to lean into. But we have to go through these experiences, as tough as they are, fall quick and get up, lick our wounds, and move forward." I think this was not like some shot at Jarrett Allen, but I think it says a lot that he mentioned those three guys, their ages, and didn't mention Jarrett Allen. Because it's not as if Jarrett Allen's age is some outlier there. Donovan Mitchell's 28. It's not like Jarrett Allen's 32. Jarrett Allen's 27. He's been in the league a while, And Koby did have nice things, positive things to say about Jared Allen too. And he kind of compared him to what Miles Turner went through with the Indiana Pacers a little bit earlier in his career, how often he was in trade rumors, whether or not he was going to re-sign there. And now he's been in the conference finals in back-to-back years is maybe a blueprint for Jared Allen. But I do think that answer was kind of telling for what the core of the Cavs is. I think the core four is fun to say. It's cool. It's cooler than saying the big three, right? Everyone's had a big three. How many teams have had a core four? But I don't think that the core is actually four guys. I think the core is three. And I think that the way we talk about the core of different teams bothers me a little bit. Maybe this is a different topic for a different show, but everyone, Boston's core, it took them 7 years. No, it took two guys 7 years. It took Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown 7 years. Yes. Al Horford was there at the start. He was there at the end, but he played for two other teams in between. Marcus Smart was somebody who you thought of as, yeah, that's part of their core. He gets traded and then they get over the hump. Like Denver's core, yeah, they made a conference finals, but that team wasn't the same, partially because Jamal Murray missed a bunch of time and then they traded for Aaron Gordon. Like, it is something that you look at and say, okay, how do we actually talk about the core? Like, is Denver's core four guys, or is it Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray? And then Aaron Gordon's a really high-level role player. Michael Porter Jr. is a very nice role player. Boston's core is actually Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Kristaps Porzingis probably not part of that core. Drew Holiday is a great player, not part of that core. Derek White, maybe the closest thing. The core is not four guys. The core is three. The core is Donovan, it's Darius, and it's Evan Mobley. Those are the three core pieces. And this doesn't mean Jared Allen's getting traded. This doesn't mean he's not a good player. He is a very good player. He is an elite level role player. I would listen to offers, and I do think if the Cavs want to shop somebody and repurpose their roster a little bit, Jared Allen is the guy that I would look into moving. But I thought by spending so much time talking about Donovan and Darius and Evan and less time talking about Jarrett, I think it speaks to his hierarchy. And that's how it should be, truthfully. Like, I don't think there's an argument to be made that, no, Jared Allen's actually more important than Darius Garland, or he's actually more important than Evan Mobley or Donovan Mitchell. Like, nobody believes that because it's not true. And maybe part of it is those other guys are still getting better. And I kind of think Jared is at his ceiling as a basketball player. Like, I just don't know where his game expands or where he has room to improve other than the toughness aspect of things. But I do think that it's time to stop calling this a core four. And, big threes are no fun to say, but the Cavs core group really is just three guys. And I think it's okay to say that. It's okay to admit that. Maybe feelings get hurt, but that's the truth of the matter. Is which of those guys am I least confident going to be on the roster if and when the Cavs win a title? It's Jared Allen. It is. And if I can say that, I don't know that you're actually a core piece. Then one other note that I wanted to squeeze in this episode today about Koby's availability is that the Cavs are hopeful they will be able to keep Ty Jerome. Obviously, he is an unrestricted free agent. We will see what happens. I do think that there's a better chance than not Ty is back. Now, he's going to be very, very expensive to keep because you're going to have to, whenever he signs his deal, whether it's with the Cavs or somebody else, the number that it would cost the Cavs to keep him is far greater than the dollar amount that Ty Jerome is going to get paid. It's probably going to cost them a player or two via trade. Like, they will probably have to cut costs elsewhere to keep him, but he's going to be somebody that, like, if you're paying him $10 million, it's actually going to be like $55 million to cost you because of luxury tax and whatnot. But I do think they're hopeful. My belief from things I have heard is that teams with cap space, and there are not many of them, probably don't want to use that cap space on Ty Jerome. When you have cap space in today's climate, you don't necessarily want to use it on a sixth man borderline starting guard versus somebody who can come in and be an all-star. And that's not what Ty is going to be. I think the Cavs are probably going to be battling with some teams that have their mid-level exception available, which is about the ballpark where the Cavs can play financially. So I think they're hopeful that he will be back. Koby Altman said as much. I've heard privately that they are hopeful that they'll be able to retain him. They might have to make some changes around the edges of the roster to make it happen. But I do think that is a priority for the Cavs. Thank you again for making this Locked on Cavs, today's Locked on Cavs, your first listen today. Thank you for making it your first listen every single day. As I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked on Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. We'll have a mailbag episode of Locked on Cavs coming your way tomorrow. We've got so much to get to with the season wrapping up. And of course, the offseason just getting started. So keep it locked in right here. And if you're watching this on YouTube as we get out of here, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked on Cavs. I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cavs.